Welcome back with part two, live chat show here on Sheffield Live TV, and it will be on my YouTube channel a bit later this evening. Thanks as ever for joining us. We've got another 25 minutes or so with Carlton Palmer in the studio here with me, and Neil Redfearn talking about the women's game and the sensational achievement of the Lionesses. Carlton, you've done so well so far. We managed 24 minutes and we didn't mention Sheffield Wednesday once. Well, I did, but you didn't.
Yeah.
So I think that's a major achievement.
Yeah.
We talked about Sheffield United, who you expect to be, in your words, there or thereabouts for a playoff position this coming season. With Sheffield Wednesday, that can't be the target this time, can it?
No, it can't be the target. I think it's clear that they've got to be in the first or second spot. I mean, if you look at last season, 7 points off winning the league, 13 draws and 50 goals conceded. So there's not a lot that they have to put right this season to win the league. I think they've strengthened well. I think the chairman has supported the manager well in the transfer market. I think they've brought in good players. Now he's got to find his best starting lineup. I think they're short of maybe a couple of players to win the league. I think it's been well documented there after the centre forward at Hull, and he wants to bring in a
Malik Wilkes, sort of a wide attacker who can score goals.
Yeah. They need a bit of pace up front.
Yeah.
But they've got the lad Smith in from Rotherham. He scored 19 goals last season. They've got Gregory, who's got 17 goals. Josh played his first game since since they got relegated from the championships. He's a big player for them this season. He's a terrific player. He's not a League One player. He's a Championship player. So it's important he keeps fit. And you've got Barry Bannon in midfield, who's without a shadow of doubt, head and shoulders above anybody in that league. So there's two types of manager. There's a manager who has to work with his hands tied behind his back. Darren hasn't got to do that this season. He's got to get it right, and he's got to get him promoted in the first one or two.
There's no hiding place for him, really, is there?
No, there's not. Listen, to be fair to Darren, we call it as it is. He took over a broken club. I think it was unfair on him that he got COVID towards the end when they got relegated from the Championship. I think had Darren been around, they may not have got relegated. And then with the transfer embargo, difficult for Darren last season, didn't get his players in till late. That culminated in the end of the season where the players weren't fit enough. He's got his players in early. He's got his squad in early. There's no excuses now. He has the best squad in that league. He has the best squad. So he's just got to get it right. It's a long season. I fully expect him to do it. I fully expect him to get it right. And I fully expect Sheffield Wednesday to get promoted this season.
Yeah, a lot of confidence. I think supporters remain to be convinced about Darren Moore, despite the fact that, from my eyes, I think he's done a good job overall. I don't say how they can not be convinced. He finished fourth last season, 7 points off winning the league, right? Now, obviously, there's criticism in terms of 13 draws, and they were draws late on in games they should have won. So he's earned the right for me to have this season. After 10 games, we'll have to see. There'll be no hiding place for him. If he can't afford to be out the top 2 or 3 all season. He just can't afford to. No. And I don't think Chanzeri would allow that either. He made it very, very clear at the end of last season what the aim was. And the aim was to get out of there. They've recruited well. Listen, it's the first game of the season. I was disappointed with the draw on Saturday, especially you can't score 3 goals and then only come away with a point at home, and the defending was poor, especially on the last goal. And Darren will be disappointed with that. But, it's a long goal season. And they've got a tough start. They've got to go to MK Dons, which is a tough game. But listen, if you're going to win the league or you're going to be up there, you've got to put a marker down. We did it the year we came up. We were fancied under Big Ron. We had to go away to Ipswich the opening day of the season. They were fancied. We put it on their toes, 4-1, and we made it very, very clear that we were the team to beat that season, and we were. And so Sheffield Wednesday have got to go out and do that. They've got players who've experienced promotion, which is good. They've got experience in the side in Stockdale, in players who've been there and seen it and done it. And now with that, they've got to live with the expectations, and that's part and parcel of football. And let's get this right, they're getting paid good money.
Indeed, and which has obviously lured the likes of Michael Smith and Michael Hekwa from Rotherham there, and other players that they've signed, including, you know, from the last one, Tyreek Backinson came from a Championship club in Bristol City. Will Vauxhall.
Yeah, there's a lot of players there that would have been playing in the Championship with other Championship clubs. They've done, but Wednesday can attract them because they pay good money. We get good crowds, 27,000 there the weekend, which is phenomenal. And those fans deserve some success now. They deserve for it to start going the other way now. They've been loyal, they've been patient, and now it's time for them to deliver. And I fully expect them to do. You know, it's over the course of the season, it did the year we got promoted. You have periods where, you know, you drop a few points and you don't play so well or whatever. But over the course of the season, I firmly believe that Darren and his coaching staff will get it right this season, and they will they'll get promoted. But they can't afford. Darren can ill afford to, you know, like I said, MK Dons, you know, a statement needs to be made. And I don't care that they're supposed to be up there. Sheffield Wednesday are the fancied team, and on paper have the best squad in the league.
Yeah, I counted the other day. They've got 19 players who've played in the Championship or above in that squad, and many of them, as you pointed out, could play in the Championship now.
Yes, for sure.
So and the great thing is they've got the players in earlier this time.
Yes.
And he needs to sort of settle on a team and maybe not mess around with it as much as he did before.
Yeah, I mean, listen, he settled on the three centre-backs. He liked that last season, and if that's the route he wants to go, then that's the route he has to go. And you know, I think the worry for me is when he plays three centre-backs, we don't score enough goals. You know, Gregory was last season, you know, and then after Gregory, we struggled for players getting into double figures. Well, you're going to have to get 80, 90 goals to get promotion. Simple as that. So, you know, the wing-backs, if you're going to play that way, have got to get further up the field. Your midfield players have got to get into the box. I mean, so, like I said, he's signed the players, whichever system he wants to play. He's got to get on with it. But
going 3-4-1-2, I think, or 3-5-2. It did pretty well in the second half of last season. He's sticking with it.
Yeah, I'm not really bothered as long as they win football games.
Yeah.
It don't matter. Systems are systems for me. I mean, at the end of the day, I do believe the higher up you go tactically, it makes a difference. But you know, back in the day when we used to play Man United, it didn't matter what system they played. They had the better players, and I think that's the same with Sheffield Wednesday. If they went to a flat back four, I think they would suit playing a 4-3-3. I really do. You know, but if Darren wants to go three centre backs, who am I to tell him what to do? I mean, you know, Sheffield Wednesday lost very few home games last season. 13 draws was their Achilles heel. You know, 7 points off winning the league last season.
You mentioned a guy at the start, Josh Windass. Not only the quality that he's got, but he looks like he's a player who's really got the bit between his teeth.
But he always has, Josh, and you know, unfortunately, I think people labelled him as injury prone. He's not really injury prone as a player. Look back at his career; he's not. Last season, he picked up an injury. That's it. That happens in football. He's worked very hard pre-season. I spoke to him on Sunday. He's worked really hard. He's just got to be a little bit careful now because that was his first 90 minutes since they. Got relegated from the Championship. So, you know, early on when the games are thick and fast and the weather's hot, he's just got to be careful that he doesn't pick up an injury. He's going to be massive for them this season. If he stays fit, I don't see them losing many games this season.
Right. We'll return to Sheffield Wednesday in a few minutes, and I'll throw the name of Fisayo Dele-Bashiru at you. You being a famous midfield player who likes to get forward, covered all the ground actually. There's certain similarities, I would suggest, some similarities, and we'll talk to Carlton about that, topping and tailing the programme, after we've heard again from Neil Redfearn, the boss of Sheffield United Women. Now, Neil is convinced that Serena Wiegman can and could well manage in the men's game. But first, and he's got views on that, but first I asked him how much it meant for Sheffield 'United' United women to be playing at Bramall Lane this season.
Well, it always has, Josh, and you know, unfortunately, I think people labelled him
You know, and it's a massive thing for the girls. I mean, they're so excited about the fact that they're going to be playing down at the lane. Because the bottom line, it's the home of Sheffield United Football Club. You know, and we are part of Sheffield United Football Club. You know, with the best will in the world, whichever way you want to look at it, there's two first teams at Sheffield United. There's the men's and the women's, and this is no disparity to the academy or anything like that. But all the other teams are development teams. You know, whether they be in the men's teams or whether they be in the women's teams, the RTC. All the other teams are development teams, which is about players developing, getting better, and creating assets for the club. But there is actually only two first teams at Sheffield United, the men's and the women's. So to have our first team playing at Bramhall Lane is just an unbelievable feeling.
And the potential for increased gates. I mean, previously, it's probably been a good thing. You've played in excellent facilities down at
Yes.
Chesterfield. But the kind of crowds that you've got, with all due respect, would have been completely lost at Bramhall Lane. I think you're talking 400 to 700. What are your realistic hopes now on the back, not only of what England women have done, but on what you are doing at Sheffield United? What are your hopes of something in the thousands now?
Well, I mean, the good thing, and I think that the people of Sheffield have got to take a huge amount of credit for this. I mean, I was there at the semi-finals when England played at Bramhall. 28,000 people turned up, you know, yeah. And I would have thought a good proportion of that would have been people from Sheffield. You know, the ground only holds 32, so they're only 4,000 short of capacity, you know, and the people of Sheffield embraced it. Now, you know, it's up to us to try and jump on the back of that if we can, you know, and keep that interest there. You know, if we can build something that's a little bit special, that's, you know, that's hopefully going towards the top flight, and then, you know, and make that step to being a full-time team, then hopefully we can keep that fan base there.
We talked earlier about the way the game is played, but one thing that really struck me about the England performances was how everybody turned up every game. Everybody was prepared to take a risk within reason. They were sort of mentally brave as well as physically brave. I mean, they played like lionesses. There's no doubt about that physically. Yeah. But they seemed to have that strength. That come across to you as well?
I think that's a great observation, Al, to be honest with you, because I've no disrespect, but I've seen England's women's teams in the past get a fair way down in the competition, and then, you know, and then maybe go out because of that factor. You know, if you look at the progress through the competition, probably outplayed a little bit against Spain, but still got over the line. You know, probably I would have thought it took them back a little bit against Sweden, because Sweden were really good for 30 minutes at Bramhall Lane in the semi-final, and, you know, understandably second ranked in the world. And they could have got blown away in that moment, but they stuck at it. So there's a mental resolve there amongst these girls that obviously Sarina Wiegman and her staff have put in place. And then, you know, you go to the final at Wembley, the biggest stage, you know, where there is expectation, the home of, you know, English football, and, you know, they find a way to get over the line again in extra time, and that's mental toughness. You know, that's mental resilience, and, you know, that's built over time. But to be fair, the manager, you know, the manageress, Sarina Wiegman, she's instilled that in the players, you know, and she's given them that quality to get over the line.
Yeah, I mean, here we are saying constantly we mustn't compare the two, and it's absolutely a valid point. But you're a man managing in a woman's world. Can a woman manage in a man's world? Talking Sarina Wiegman and others.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's what's happening now is there's two shifts here. Obviously the men's games shifting a little bit as well. If you look at the rule changes that have been brought in, it's more technical, tactical. You know, the physical side of it is there as regards people, you know, players being able to, you know, compete for 90 minutes and, you know, and have that intensity over the course of a game. But there's some parallels here psychologically as well, you know, between the men's and the women's game. And I think that approach, you know, it's not as relevant now that it's a man that's in charge or a woman. You know, I think there's strengths and weaknesses that people bring, you know, to being a manager, and that includes women for me. I've not seen anybody like Serena Wiegman in the women's game, if I'm honest. You know, there's a lot of her traits that you could compare in the men's game. You know, for example, I mean, I looked through. You know, she axed Steph Alton from the squad, who's been a mainstay for England. You know, at a time when she'd probably struggled with injuries, and you thought it was the right decision to do. You know, she's subbed Ellen White at times. Now, who'd have thought we could do without Ellen White for 90 minutes? You know, she's a legend. But she brought Russo on, and Russo picked up the baton, and she took, you know, the game forward. You know, she put a centre half up front against Millie Bright against Spain, because the game was going away from England, but she wrestled the initiative away from Spain. She stuck Spain into a scrap, you know, and it's something that you would do in the men's game, you know. So there's a lot of comparisons here. This is a clever woman. This is a clever football brain. And it doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman. You know, if you've got that sort of knowledge and that sort of ability to create a game change, then you can cope at any level.
Right, that's a great answer to the question. So saying yes, she could do, and
Yes,
and maybe she will. And just finally, I mean, it was all very close to home for you, Neil. You'll know plenty of the people involved in England's success, and in particular, your partner Lucy Ward, who I say was heavily involved in the BBC coverage. I thought gave us an outstanding insight. I guess you were proud of her as well.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, she's you know, knowledge of the game, and we talk about the game quite a bit, you know, and we talk about the men's game, the women's game. You know, at times we'll watch games together. You know, we'll talk about you know, the over the 4 moments of the game. You know, in possession, out possession, regains and losses, and you know, she's bright. She's football bright, and she understands it. And obviously, she's played herself. You know, she's had an interest through the men's game when we were both at Leeds together. And she's in a good place. You know, she's in a good place to sort of impart that knowledge now, and you know, I think she does a really good job.
Yeah, I bet she helps you in yours. I'm sure she does, and you bear notes. Neil, many thanks for joining us, and all the best, mate, for Sheffield United women's team this coming season. Look forward to seeing you on the circuit with TalkSport maybe as well.
Brilliant. Yeah, I enjoy his times on TalkSport, mate. That's brilliant. Lovely. I've enjoyed it. Thanks, Al.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers.
Neil Redfearn talking to me earlier in the week. Carlton Palmer with us live in the studio. Quoting Neil, it doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman, she's got a great, clever football brain.
Yeah, no, I thought she managed the games very, very well. Very, very well. Yeah, like I said, you know, even before Neil said that, you know, I said about asking the player before the tournament, she wasn't fit. And that's as simple. How many times have England gone into tournaments with players, even though they're good players, or great players as it were, and taken a gamble and they've not been fit? But again, I come back to it. She's been able to do that, I think, because she's not English by nationality.
Although she won it in her homeland.
Oh yeah, no. Yeah. I listen. Don't get me wrong. I'm not decrying her achievements. I think she was fantastic. I watched her make tactical changes, like Neil said, against Spain, shuffling the players around. She started with the same 11. She made the same substitutions, which were, you know, important. She was in tune with the game of football, and that doesn't, a woman or a man, if you're in tune with the game of football, it doesn't matter. She can manage a men's team, that is for sure.
So you're there playing in the Championship or the Premier League. She's introduced as the new manager of your club. Your reaction?
Not a problem to me. See, the biggest thing as a player, it doesn't matter whether it's a woman or a man, it comes down to respect. If you've won what she's won, if you've done what she's done, then the respect is there from the start. The problem is when the players don't respect the manager, woman or man, and that's in life in general, isn't it?
She command respect, no question. Yeah. There's somebody else as well that you feel called the Chelsea women's manager.
Emma. Yeah, Emma. She's, you know, you've seen her insights on TV. She actually, you know, she knows the game inside out. You know, and she's done an unbelievable job at Chelsea. So again, I think she could manage in the league without a shadow of doubt.
And just before we leave the women's game, quoting Neil Redfearn from earlier, his message was about the money side. Let's not inflate the women's game. It doesn't have to be about money. And I think you were nodding your head a bit, bearing in mind what's happened in the the Premier League over the years.
Yeah, I felt the game changed, and don't get me wrong, I'm not sitting here as an hypocrite. I was the beneficiary of it as well, but I'd like to think I was different, and I like to think the supporters of any club I would play for would say if Carlton Palmer was earning £1 to earning £1 million, he did what he did, right? And that's me. But I felt that there was a change in the game once that type of money came in. When I was growing up and I started at West Brom, I knew the best players were at West Brom. Brian Robson was the one who drove the jagging. Cyril Regis, Brendan Batson, Laurie Cunningham, they were the best players in the football club. They had the best cars. You go into a club now, you wouldn't know whether it's a youth team or a first team player driving in there, and they don't, you know, with all due respect, I'm not saying everybody, but they don't have that hunger, they don't have that desire to want to win. Like back in the day, I was talking to my missus the other day. I you know, when I first started off playing football, if I had an injury, I couldn't afford not to play, because I needed that money to pay my mortgage or pay my rent. So I'd take an injection or do what I had to do to play. You know, I think there's a lot of players in this day and age would happily sign their contracts and not play at all and pick up their money.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about one potentially outstanding young player, and he happens to be at your former club, Sheffield Wednesday, and he had a terrific start to the season with 2 absolute wonderful goals. Midfield player Fisayo Dele-Bashiru. What do you make of him?
Well, I'm obviously gobsmacked again that he's been allowed to get into a situation where they could lose him. I believe they've turned down 500,000 for Blackpool for him. I mean, how has he got into a position that he's in the last year of his contract? Now, I know that Darren's trying desperately to convince him to stay. I mean, he's a talented boy, and that's clear. So I just don't understand how Sheffield Wednesday get themselves into this situation. Surely you've got the foresight. You look at this player. You think even if you've got an inkling that he's going to do well, you put him on a contract to safeguard yourself. Mm-hmm. Now you've got him in the shop window because he's playing. You've got to play him because he needs minutes and he wants minutes. And if you don't play him, he's going to want to leave. So I'm hoping now that. He's an unbelievable talent. So I think he's got an unbelievable future ahead of him. Josh Windass said he thinks there's more to come from him as well. So I'm hoping that, you know, they're trying to tie him down to a new long-term contract. Obviously, they've got the funds to do that, and they're going to have to do that now to keep him. Yeah. Should never be allowed to get in that position.
It's fortunate, really, that they seem to have had only one bid for him, and that of only 500,000, which doesn't come anywhere near, does it?
No, it doesn't. But I mean, the problem that they've got is he's out of contract at the end of the season. Yeah. So hopefully, if he's getting game time, because that's his problem. If he moves, he might not get game time. If he goes up a league, he might not get game time. So hopefully, Darren's a good bloke. He's a really, you know, let me say this: he's a really good bloke, and people like to play for him. Genuinely, as a bloke, he's a nice bloke. So players come to play for Darren Moore. So hopefully, with the way that Darren is, he'll be able to convince him to sign a new contract, because he's got a big future, and Sheffield Wednesday can't be losing players of that quality at that age as well.
No, and I don't know. I'm reading the tea leaves. I think they'll sort it, but we'll have to wait and see. And you know, a few anxious glances here and there before they do, because of what he can do, which he's shown already. Carlton, thanks so much for coming in. It's always a pleasure to see you. I guess I owe you a pint at least of Guinness, maybe more, as the evening goes on. Thank you for being there and watching. Thank you to Neil Redfearn. And as I say, this will be on my YouTube channel later on tonight. Thanks for watching. See you. Bye bye.